Welcome back to the Positively Jacked podcast. We dish real-time strategies on nutrition, fitness, and wellness and lifestyle trends to prioritize positive psychological habits and best practices. Our goal for each episode is to relay helpful information and topics relating to health, mental, and physical nutrition, lifestyle, and habit formation, including giving RTS or real-time strategy for anyone that can apply in the same day to help benefit themselves. Another solo podcast episode for me, which I'm actually getting a lot more comfortable with these. So if you hear me riffing a little bit more and you enjoy it, awesome. If not, keep it to yourself because I'm having fun and that's what matters. But also I want this to be worth your time, worth your 20 to 30 minutes, whether it's on your commute or whether it's just because you saw share the link and you're a kind person who wanted to give us a listen. This week, solo pod, I'm going to be going over just some fun little myth busting sessions about the fitness space. The fitness space, unfortunately, is a lot like other spaces where you have people who truly want to help you get better at health, wellness, and fitness. And then you have people who are really interested in your money and finding a good way to get you to spend it. So we're going to be going over some myth busts today, just some really common things we see in the industry and in and around it. And I'm going to give my 2 cents on it. I'm also going to highlight a few of our wins this week for some positively jacked athletes and clients of ours that we just want to celebrate. We're going to finish up with some calls to action and a challenge for you. But aside from all that, let's get into the myths that I'm going to try to bust. Now, fair warning, these are things that, possibly spurred from a grain of truth and just got way overinflated. These could also be just misunderstandings. And these are also not things set in stone. Your fitness and wellness journey is your own. But I am going to try to provide some logic, provide some feedback, and some actual application into the areas that we see people struggling with very common myths or very common misunderstood areas in the industry. So science evolves, the context matters, but I'm just here to provide as much clarity as possible. So these are some of the ones that, people have talked to us about, that we've talked to clients about. And what I'm going to do is kind of go over the myth, why it's believed, where's the context in there, the truth as far as I see it, or as far as I've seen it applied in coaching and with people's work, and some takeaways if we can give you some practical application on how to navigate it. So we're going to go ahead and just go through a list. The first one is one we hear all too common: carbs make you fat. And so I understand why this is something that people think. Carbs are associated with sugar, right? Monosaccharides, polysaccharides. There's a lot of details there that you could break down into why carbs could be the primary driver of making you fat. Having said that, body fat doesn't just happen because of one macro source, and it doesn't just happen because of, that one macro source being inherently negative or a villain. It happens because of caloric balance, what you eat, where it comes from, and how it burns. And notice I didn't say anything about training, but just how it burns. You burn calories even without training. And so it depends on your body's balance of that. Does it burn fuel well or does it not? And if it burns fuel well, what fuel does it burn well? And carbs are part of that. It's actually one of your body's preferred sources of energy. So saying that carbs make you fat is a blanket statement. It's putting on blinders to so many other factors that I really don't like, because there are so many reasons that could contribute to excess weight and not very optimal body composition. So realistically, it comes from people thinking that carbs equal sugar. Sugar drives fat because of insulin response. Is there something to that? Sure. But also, if I have a client come into me who says that they avoid carbs all day, every day, and then I look at their logs and they're eating 150 grams of fat in the day, that's also going to lead to a ridiculous caloric surplus. And that caloric surplus is likely going to lead to body composition issues. So it's not just carbs, right? It's about the balance. It's about the balance of how much you burn, and it's a balance about knowing how much you intake, not guessing, not approximating, knowing. So if that's something that you've heard, I can promise you it's not the only villain There's quite a few more that you could look at that would make a lot more sense than just carbs. All right. Number 2, the myth is if women lift weights, they will get bulky. So I understand why people might think this, because a lot of times the examples in the gym, in your typical Globo gym or big box setting, are people lifting weights and chasing that quote unquote pump, right? Very pumping iron, Arnold, bodybuilding-esque mindset. I'm speaking as a male with a fairly high metabolism, both genetically and just because I train quite a bit, right? If I look at the men in my family, all the way to my dad and my grandpa, they were not big guys with regard to body fat. So mind you, I'm speaking from that perspective. And just from that perspective alone, it's incredibly hard to put on excessive amounts of muscle. Now, when you go to the female side, people are like, oh, well, females, you know, if they lift even a little bit, it's going to put on bulk. That's not the case. Putting on excess muscle to where you look bulky is hard for anybody because it requires a lot of things that people don't realize are part of the equation other than just lifting weight. It starts with excess calories. Those excess calories are in proteins and carbs, but they can also be in fats as well. That excess calorie leads to you having an excess fuel. Then you train in specific ways, right? Hypertrophy training, aka adding muscle mass to the body. That adding muscle mass to the body is what leads to quote unquote bulkiness. And so there you go, right? That's kind of the short and simple way of looking at it. But one thing I will address when it comes to this is a lot of females that I've worked with have said they've gained weight when they started strength training, and they associate that with getting bulky. When you start strength training, whether you are male or female, if strength training is fairly new to you, especially, strength training comes with certain demands, right? Strength training means you're putting more load on the joint, you're putting more load into the tissues, you're probably causing some byproduct to happen because you are training that strength training component, that stimulus. And because of that, your muscles will do something. They will try to repair themselves. They will try to heal themselves and replace energy stores that you've lost. So when you strength train, and if you strength train effectively, some things that your muscles are going to recruit are carbs, sugars, right? They're going to replace the glycogen that you use, likely the creatine phosphate that you use. They are going to need water for recovery, and they're going to need salt for hydration. So if you're pulling carbs, sugars, carbs, sugars, salts, and water post strength training, you might have some excess weight added to you because you are lifting weight and your body is in a sense of recovery, right? Recovery like that, it just goes with the territory, right? You're going to have some inflammation. You're going to have some water pull. But does that mean it's a bad thing? No. The way I see it, your body's really freaking smart and wants to protect you. So it's going to pull water and all those other materials into it and make it to where your muscles will recover well if you're using strength training. But does that necessarily mean you're going to get bulky? I don't think so. If you're mindful of your caloric balance, if you're mindful of your food sources and just how much strength work you're doing, you're going to be just fine. Okay. This one's kind of an interesting one. And mind you, I'm not a medical doctor, but this is, from my perspective, knowing what I know about anatomy, physiology, you need to quote unquote detox to reset your body. Now, this comes from people thinking, right, I've eaten a lot of not natural things, or I've eaten a lot of fast food that could have a lot of added chemicals and dyes and all this other stuff. And so I need to detox that from my body in order for my body to run effectively. So first things I'm going to say is if you have functioning liver and kidneys, your body is probably doing a pretty good job at detoxing because that's what those things help with. Having said that, what most people think is in order to have their body 100 and feel, or wow, I'm sorry. What people think is that they have to have their body feeling 100% healthy and they need to clean out all those non-natural things. But I'm going to point out to you something. Snake venom is natural. Urine is natural. But there's quite a bit that we buy at the store, like crops that didn't quite happen naturally, right? There's a lot of genetically modified crops nowadays, so they're not exactly 100% natural. So The idea that you need to detox from these non-natural sources and get your body to that baseline doesn't really make sense. You've got things going towards detoxing your body, aka your kidneys and your liver and your systems in general. They're good at delegating that stuff out. Now, I will say, cleaning up sources in your diet, not a bad idea, right? Eating less touched food, more whole food sources, things that have a low ingredients list is not a bad idea, but it's not something that you have to do just to take control of your health and your wellness. And mind you, I'm painting with broad brush strokes here, because there are some people who might have legitimate toxification and poisoning and stuff like that. That would probably do better to actually have a blood panel to see if they have any toxicity or detoxing issues in their blood, but very unlikely that that's a place anyone necessarily needs to start. So, really simple one here that people have brought a few times, and I just don't agree with it, is fasted cardio burns more fat. I haven't seen any studies that conclusively say this. I think the idea is that because you're fasted, as soon as you start elevating your heart rate and getting into target zones, your body's going to prefer to utilize your fat stores as an energy. And there's actually more research that I've seen coming about, especially when it comes to females, that fueling beforehand autophagy prevents your body utilizing possibly muscle tissue and other not so favorable spots to pull energy from, unless you have something beforehand to give you a little bit of fuel as you deplete stores and as you train your body. So realistically, fasted cardio burns more fat. I don't think there's anything that really conclusively proves that. I think any type of true aerobic state work regularly in the week isn't a bad idea. It helps your oxygenation, helps your body feel probably pretty good, because a lot of people train too hard and don't really bias the aerobic systems necessarily enough. And mind you, when I say aerobic, I'm thinking, maybe conversation pace, maybe a little bit faster than, with an elevated heart rate over 20 to 30 minutes. I know I'm making a lot of CrossFitters pissed off now, but I hate to say it, guys, in a CrossFit class, a lot of times you don't get a truly aerobic response very long, because all of you avoid the 5K run and the 5K row days. So stop doing that, and maybe you'll have more aerobic work. But I guarantee, I don't guarantee, I have not seen personally anything conclusive push that fasted cardio is better than just regular aerobic training, well thought out and good fueling throughout the week. This one's going to tie back a little bit more towards the one we talked about earlier with if women lift weights, they get bulky. And the idea or the myth here is more protein equals more muscle no matter what. More protein can definitely help build muscle and gains, but in actuality, it's probably a combination of more protein and carbohydrates than anything, because you need the building blocks to replenish what you're doing when you're training hypertrophy. If you are trying to gain more muscle, there are people who probably just eat a lot more protein and don't think about the other macros or their caloric balance or their training stimulus. And that more protein likely will just lead to some really not fun bowel movements if you're not scaling your fiber appropriately in your other areas. So is more protein necessary if you're trying to put on muscle? It's probably going to help, especially sustaining muscle and with carbs, putting on muscle. But more protein doesn't guarantee anything, right? Other than really upset digestive issues if you're not careful. So be mindful of the amount of protein you need. Work with somebody on that. That's definitely something that if you're curious about just loading up protein, I would not recommend it. So moving on to the last couple of myths here. I'll try to be somewhat brief, but next myth is you need supplements to see progress. No, you don't. Supplements are exactly as they say, the word says. They are supplemental. They are meant to assist with certain things at the very, very end of you exhausting efforts in several other domains. But for sake of this episode, we are going to talk a little bit about supplements, because I would be a hypocrite saying that I do everything that I do without using supplements. Could I do the things that I do without using supplements? Yeah, it would just be a little bit more difficult. And you'll see why. So I've been doing strength and conditioning, workouts, stuff like that for almost 25 years now, right? I started when I was a teenager, and soon after that is when supplements started getting involved. So something I've been taking since I was young is protein and carb supplements, but that is also because a lot of times it's just hard for me to eat enough food. So something simple like supplemental whey protein and some dextrose, or a carb supplement that I can add to that, makes it really easy for me to get a little bit of calories in extra in and around my training session. Helps recovery, but also helps a high number of calories that I need to get in. Creatine, it's likely one of the most researched supplements there is. There's all sorts of benefits being shown through, every month it seems nowadays, but I utilize it. I've used it before. Is it necessary for everybody? No, there are benefits to it. But again, I didn't start using creatine until well after I was eating enough and had enough calories and a lot of other things in place. I do use a ZMA and L-theanine. Both of those are directed at assisting me sleep. More often than not, magnesium glycinate is something that's pushed for sleep assistance, and that's one of the main reasons I use it. I've seen people say that there is no actual evidence to this, which, I've looked in and around. There's a lot of anecdotal stuff, but for me personally, if I take a ZMA and I don't take a ZMA, days apart, I definitely notice a drop in sleep quality, especially depth of sleep. I'll get more REM, or I'll just move less when I sleep. And I don't use it all the time. I just use it on occasion. The L-theanine, another one that's an amino acid that I've used in the past that helps me fall asleep a little bit better, helps my nervous system and my brain relax a little bit more. There are bits and pieces of research there, but supplements as a whole don't really get researched a ton in inconclusive type trials, but that's also because they are supplemental. So again, this is a reason why they're best served at the very end of exhausting a lot of other efforts and not at the start. Again, these supplements aren't exactly 100% essential for me. If I had a little bit better practices winding down at night, might not need as much ZMA or L-theanine, or if I just got more leafy greens and magnesium sources. Protein and carb supplements, could I eat more food? Sure, it would just make my days a little bit more tough and I'd be full all day. Creatine, yeah, I could probably go without it. Do I enjoy the benefits from it, especially right now, running all the high miles and doing strength work that I'm doing? Absolutely. So supplements aren't essential, right? And I know so many people who get through their very fit training regimes and health without them. So the idea that they are essential to see progress is unfounded. Okay, last myth that we're going to bust, and then we're going to talk about a last few highlights of our PJXP people. But this one's an interesting one because I understand why, and you probably will too, but let's take a look. You should feel sore after every workout. I understand why, because people think that if you train to an effective dose, your body gets pushed beyond its quote unquote limits. And because of that, soreness is a byproduct. There's a lot of things that can produce soreness. I've always been a fan of minimum effective doses and leaving with a little bit more effort in your tank. And because that makes it to where training can continue, it doesn't kill your momentum. As far as soreness goes, your training age, your exposure to the lifts, your intensity in the lifts, your volume in the lifts, a lot of that stuff can lead to more or less soreness. I once saw a quote that said, it doesn't take a good coach to make you sore after a workout. It takes a good coach to make sure you can continue working out. And I do believe that, right? If I make someone sore every single time they train, there's people who train with me on a 2-day on, 1-day off cadence. If I make them sore every day they train, they're going to be incredibly uncomfortable most of the time. And that's not the goal when you're going for necessary strength, health, and wellness and fitness. The goal is that you you know your capabilities, you train them, you push them, but you also understand that the body needs time to recover. The body needs time to grow and adapt. And because of that, soreness is not always what you're looking for. Sometimes you're just looking for a good effort, a good high heart rate, a good respiration rate, decent repetitions. You might leave feeling better than when you came in. And that's actually probably a pretty effective training session. But if I make you sore all the time, your momentum and your motivation are going to slowly dwindle because you're not going to remember a time that you were comfortable in your fitness. And that makes no sense. So soreness, not a necessity to gauge a workout, and definitely not a necessity for every workout. So as we're wrapping up and going over some highlights, though, I'd like to point out to a few clients that are kind of crushing it right now. One of them is Hannah Scahill. If you're listening, Hannah, thank you for listening, and congratulations on making the 2025 CrossFit semifinals. Hannah's been absolutely working so aggressively, so awesomely in the off season and over this past year and a half through shoulder injury tweaks and stuff like that. And I couldn't be more proud. And that was one of the goals we'd set out for. We knew it was a big goal with the way her shoulder had been behaving, but lo and behold, she did the work. We communicated great together. She had a great team with her in Florida, working with her on her shoulder, her skills, and could not be more happier for her. Another one is Abigail. I'd like to just give you a quick shout out for running her 5K incredibly successfully. When Abigail and I first started working together, she said that being able to run a 5K without stopping was a huge goal. And lo and behold, she did it. Not only did she do it, she did it 2 weeks earlier than the race that she had signed up for. So that was pretty cool. But love to give some shout outs to our athletes if and when possible. And those two ladies are absolutely crushing it. So we're going to head into our little wrap up. After that slight detour, just remember with these myths around fitness, like we started the episode with, I think there are a lot of people out there that are good coaches. I think there are people out there who are genuinely trying to help. I think there are also people out there who see coaching and supplementation and certain fitness trends and stuff like that as a way to benefit their dollar. Now, I am a professional career coach. This is how I make my living, but that doesn't mean that I should lie to people or mislead them in any way along these myths in order to try to facilitate that. I think there's plenty to be done and plenty to be had as far as coaches making a difference and making a living out of this without having to sell some sort of snake oil. And that's just my take on it. And I can do that because this is my podcast. But in the end, your health isn't about dodging every fitness myth. It's about building consistent habits that align with your life. We believe that. Jess is my business partner. She believes that. And that's how we apply our coaching practices. If there are things that pop up, little challenge to you this week is that when you see something that seems a little too good to be true or some sort of a myth or fitness trend that you're not quite sure about, I want you to ask yourself, who benefits from me believing this? Right? So we can tie this back to one of the ones earlier, right? Women get bulky by lifting weights. Who benefits from me reading this? Not you, because that means you're going to avoid lifting weights. And we've seen the benefit that females get from having regular strength training. We have it quite a bit with a lot of our athletes. So who actually benefits from you not lifting weight? Well, people who want to lift weights because you're not going to be taking up their weight in their space. But also the answer is not you. And so if that's the case, then it's a big red flag for some snake oil. Lastly, if you've been enjoying some of these episodes lately, both solo and with me and Jess, providing some cool dialogue on some great discussions, we really appreciate it if you could head over to Spotify or podcasts on Apple and give us a like and a follow. It's always nice to be able to engage with people, and obviously we want to grow our audience. And if you could go to our YouTube, we are putting in the process of putting up all of our podcast episode videos up there, as well as building out some cool content to share for anybody who likes our message and likes what we do and wants us to keep doing it. So give us a follow, give us a like, share our materials. We like to have new conversations with people about this stuff because it helps them sift through a lot of those myths and BS that can get very confusing and overwhelming, because we live in the age of information and it's just an onslaught to us every time. So we'd love to help you navigate that. As always, this is Nate, Coach Nate from Positively Jacked. Stay positively jacked.